In a series of posts on social media, Culture Secretary Nadine Dorries has announced that she intends to privatise Channel 4. She said, "Channel 4 rightly holds a cherished place in British life, and I want that to remain the case. I have come to the conclusion that government ownership is holding Channel 4 back from competing against streaming giants like Netflix and Amazon. A change of ownership will give Channel 4 the tools and freedom to flourish and thrive as a public service broadcaster long into the future. I will set out the future plan for Channel 4 in a white paper in due course." Privatising Channel 4 would be a massive move. We'll explain in a moment why it's a terrible idea. First, though, just a reminder of the competence of the person overseeing this change.
Just because Channel 4 has been established as a public service broadcaster, and just because it's in receipt of public money, we should never kind of audit the future of Channel 4, and we should never evaluate how Channel 4 looks in the future and whether or not it's a sustainable and viable model. It's quite right that the government should do that.
But Channel 4 is not like the BBC. It's not in receipt of licence fee money. It makes its money from commercial operations.
And so, although it's,
I mean, there are a range of views. Obviously, Channel 4 has taken a particular position on the future.
So can I just say that the discussions about what we do with Channel 4 and how we evaluate Channel 4 also happened before I arrived in my post.
That was Dorries speaking to MPs 4 months ago. She presumably now knows Channel 4 isn't publicly funded, but her plan to privatise the company does seem pretty short-sighted. She said proceeds from Channel 4 sale will be invested in left-behind areas, investing in indies and creative skills desperately needed in our rapidly growing creative industries. We made more films here in last Q 2021 than Hollywood. Many more studios opening. Funding creative skills is key. Now, it's unclear how much any sale of Channel 4 would make. We'll get onto the details of that in one moment. But the key point here is that she says we made more films in the UK in the last quarter of 2021 than Hollywood, with many more studios opening. Now, to me, this suggests our creative industries are already a success. And it turns out one of the reasons they are so successful is because of organisations like Channel 4. Former Channel 4 editor-at-large, Dorothy Burns, explains.
The government has said that it hopes to make £1 billion. I'm really not sure it's going to make £1 billion, but it has also said that it will use that money to invest in independent production company. And that's the bit that really doesn't make sense, because all Channel 4's programmes are made by independent production companies. Channel 4 doesn't make any of its own programmes. So if you wanted to support independent production companies, you would invent Channel 4, which is exactly what Margaret Thatcher did.
But what the government's
She invented Channel 4 in order to invent the independent production company sector, which has made billions and billions for this country and is still doing so.
That's right. Channel 4 has always been banned from producing its own shows and instead is committed to buying all the shows it broadcasts from other producers. That's meant the channel has supported the growth of production companies such as Red, who created Queer as Folk and launched the career of Russell T Davies, or Planet 24, who created The Big Breakfast. It's a model which is not a million miles from how Netflix or Amazon operate. Organisations Dorries wants Channel 4 to ape, of course. But there is a key difference. Because Channel 4 is government-owned, we have a say over what kind of content gets produced. For example, unlike Netflix or Amazon, Channel 4 are mandated to produce high-quality news reporting and investigations, as well as commission from independent and homegrown talent. The Amazon and Netflixes of the world won't reliably produce this, because it doesn't turn an easy profit. But public organisations like Channel 4 do. Privatise it and you risk cutting off a long-term supply of cash for production companies that make high-quality or high-risk TV. And that's much more important to the creative industries than any one-off windfall Dorries is talking about. And now we can get on to how much that one-off windfall would be. The Guardian reports Ender's analysis has said that Channel 4's value could be anywhere between £600 million and £1.5 billion, depending on how much freedom over its model a new owner is given. There's, of course, a big difference between 600 million and 1.5 billion pounds. And the large range is partly because we still don't know exactly what any buyer would be buying. Would they be purchasing an organisation with a mandate to produce independent but potentially unprofitable journalism, as well as cheap but commercially successful content? Or would they be buying something with no strings attached? It goes without saying that the fewer the regulations, the more valuable the company is to shareholders, which means the bigger the windfall for the creative industries today, the less likely they are to get a stable income in the future.
What's interesting about it is it does smack of Orbanism. Viktor Orban is the autocratic leader of Hungary who hollowed out democracy in Hungary partly by essentially shutting down media outlets which were deemed to be too critical. And there's no question at all that the government see Channel 4 as a bastion of kind of liberal, anti-Brexit, anti-Toryism of some description. What I think really riles them, if you look at Channel 4's charter, they place representing unheard voices as a high priority. They attract younger audiences disproportionately who aren't exactly well disposed towards Toryism. And it is striking. Their cultural output is very unique. It's a Sin, for example, this iconic drama by Russell T Davies, which explored the impact of HIV/AIDS on gay and bisexual men in the 1980s. That would not have been commissioned anywhere else. I mean, you can see other comedies as well. Mae Martin's Feel Good, the experiences of a non-binary comedian. Aisling B's This Way Up. All Black Broadcasting Day that they did last year. These are kind of cultural forms you just don't see elsewhere. Now, where the government have a point, by the way, in that Channel 4 does face challenges, as all broadcasters do right now, that the rise of streaming is carving off existing audiences, not least young people. I mean, there's no question that's the case. Advertising is migrating elsewhere, Google, Facebook, that kind of thing. And given Channel 4 depends on that for 90% of its income, that is an issue. And the fact it has commercial breaks annoys people who watch Netflix and they don't have that. But, the government's consultation was rigged in favour of privatisation. And if you listen to, for example, the Media Reform Coalition, they suggested, because opponents say, well, your solution is basically to get, well, they said a granny in Stockport, which is where I'm from, to foot the bill. But the Media Reform Coalition had a good idea, which you tax booming Google and Facebook advertising, and that would provide an alternative stream of revenue. Even when UK advertising dipped in the pandemic, is over £23 billion a year. So if you just tax that 5%, then that would raise it to £1.2 billion, which would be allow for Channel 4 to be funded without any advertising whatsoever. So if the issue is these big streamers like Netflix and so on, and they don't have any advertising on them, then obviously the solution is to put a tax on the booming advertising that exists in this country, which has migrated from, for example, Channel 4. But they haven't done that because they're ideologically committed to privatisation. They don't believe the state should own things. And they see, of course, Channel 4 as a threat politically because it provides views and perspectives that other broadcasters don't.
Let's talk about what other motives might be behind this then, if it's not honestly an attempt by Nadine Dorries to support the cultural industries of Britain. Some political reaction. Backbench Tory MP Julian Knight has said this. Now, elephant in the room time. Is this being done for revenge for Channel 4's biased coverage of the likes of Brexit and personal attacks on the Prime Minister? The timing of the announcement, 7 p.m, coinciding with Channel 4 News, was very telling. Now, whether or not their coverage is biased is up for you to decide. But what is certainly true is that Channel 4 has angered the Tories in the recent past. During the 2019 election, Boris Johnson didn't turn up to a debate between party leaders on the climate emergency, and this happened.
We kept the invitations open to the leaders of the Conservative Party and the Brexit Party. They have not taken up their places yet. Instead, a reminder, the ice caps are melting as politicians around the globe fail to cut greenhouse gas emissions in time to stop rising temperatures.
And Dorries may have personal reasons to want revenge. In February, she gave this car crash interview to Channel 4 News.
One of the things the Prime Minister said today in the House of Commons that was basically untrue, and clearly untrue, was his allegation that Keir Starmer was responsible for not prosecuting Jimmy Savile. How can you have a Prime Minister just repeating fake news like that?
Well, I have no idea the background of Keir Starmer, and I know
It's
that
not true, and the Prime Minister repeated it. It's an old meme that's just repeated by.
Well, you know, there were things that Keir Starmer
theorists.
said that someone who was the former Director of Public Prosecutions shouldn't have said at the dispatch box.
He didn't say anything that wasn't true.
He shouldn't have prejudged what a Met investigation was going to find.
He didn't say anything that was untrue.
Well,
Boris Johnson said something that was untrue.
He said things
he
that were
misled the House
inappropriate.
today.
I don't believe that's the case.
Well, it is what you're saying that Keir Starmer was responsible.
I don't know. I don't know the details.
Well, that's what the Prime Minister said.
But I don't. You haven't heard
he
your
shouldn't
word
have
for
said it, should he?
Well, I think there are lots of things that Keir Starmer shouldn't have said.
Well, there are clearly things that he said that aren't true.
The Prime Minister.
Now, whether they were deliberate lies or not has yet to be established. But he's clearly said things to the House that were not true.
The Prime Minister tells the truth.
What's clear is that the Tories cheerleading this move don't seem to understand what they're actually arguing for. Ben Bradley MP tweeted this in response to Dorries' announcement. "Welcome this. The state doesn't need to be owning media. It made sense once when we had a handful of channels, but now we have a million choices. Channel 4 can't raise any of its own money, which holds it back. Money ends up being from the taxpayer. Let it free and it will compete." That tweet was quickly deleted, presumably because it's entirely untrue, as we've said already. Channel 4 isn't funded by the taxpayer. But just like with Dorries, Ben Bradley might have other motives to want to sell off Channel 4. This is the completely accurate introduction he received on Channel 4 News in 2019.
The Conservative MP Ben Bradley is in the House of Commons. He voted to remain, then became a Brexiteer, then voted against the deal, then voted for the deal, then said he'd struggle to back the deal again, but now says he will back the deal. Ben Bradley, why do you get to change your mind?
Of course, not all Tories are backing the move. Along with Julian Knight, Damien Green, Jeremy Hunt and Tobias Ellwood have all publicly opposed the privatisation. But who will win out? The babies like Nadine Dorries and Ben Bradley throwing their toys out of the pram, or the true heirs to Margaret Thatcher who want to save a channel she herself launched? One challenge they might have is that this didn't appear in their manifesto, and the House of Lords, basically, if they oppose some piece of legislation that was in a manifesto, it's sort of convention that they basically just cede and say, fine, this is we're not elected. You got elected on this platform, so we're going to let this pass. Potentially, because this wasn't in the manifesto, they might play a bit tougher than they otherwise would. Although I never like relying on a bunch of unelected lords to try and save ourselves from aggressive conservative policies.